All right, Iyengar Yoga. What is it? How does it work? Why is it special? And what can you expect if you go to an Iyengar Yoga class? That is the topic for today's chat. So let's begin. I would like to take this opportunity to share with you 4 characteristics that I find really make Iyengar Yoga what it is. Okay, it distinguishes it as a method, and these 4 characteristics will likely show up for you if you do Iyengar Yoga anywhere and with any teacher. Okay, we all, as teachers, we all have our own personalities and our own styles to some degree, but there is a constant amongst certified Iyengar Yoga teachers, and it's because we are all dedicated and devoted to this methodology. Okay? Hey there. If you have a cranky back, stiff neck, if you're overweight, anxious, or if you simply don't look, feel, or resonate with the images of yoga on social media, you will definitely want to check out my online course, Iyengar Yoga Fundamentals. The first characteristic that really struck me when I went to my first Iyengar Yoga class as a beginner was precision. Okay, the clarity of the teaching instructions, the specificity of the teaching instructions were very clear and very precise. The teachers told me where to place my foot, how to turn my thigh, and not much was left up to the imagination. So as a beginner, I found this very helpful. I wasn't lost, I was being instructed. And alongside that, not only did I know what was being asked of me and what to do, but also it made me feel safe. Yeah, so many of you already know I came to Iyengar Yoga not in a good way. I was dealing with very severe and long-standing chronic back pain, a whole bunch of different issues, which I may in some other video go into. But suffice to say that safety, keeping myself safe, was a big, big deal. Right? So this specificity of the teaching and this precision of the teaching instructions really helped to make me feel safe. It made me feel or experience that the teacher was looking at me and seeing me and giving me feedback. And so again, as a beginner, I found that extremely important and comforting. Okay, now a lot of times people will feel like this precision, these precise instructions, they immediately relate it to alignment. And in general conversations, you'll find Iyengar Yoga, it has a focus on alignment. That's what people say. And it's true. Yes, there is physical shapes that we look for as practitioners and as teachers. But I want to just mention that it's not actually one shape, right? So the alignment that we look for in Iyengar Yoga is ultimately the alignment of mind and body, okay? And the precise instructions, put your foot here, press here, turn here, all that sort of stuff, is a tool, like a gateway inward that can actually propel you towards that alignment of mind and body. Okay, so there, that's may not be for the absolute beginner coming in off the street. They may be much more interested in, can I take the general shape of the pose? And fine, we can give some alignment cues for that as well. But it becomes very reductionist, right? To just say that Iyengar Yoga is about alignment. It actually has so much more to offer than only the physical alignment. Okay, so that whole idea, which encompasses so much: precise instruction, alignment, and then this sense of safety, this sense of comfort, this sense of being supported, right? To me, is all kind of under the umbrella of precision and is very much inherent to the methodology, to the Iyengar Yoga method. The second characteristic that I want to look at is sequencing. Okay? Sequencing in Iyengar Yoga is always strategic. Okay? There's nothing random about the collection of poses that are put in a class or a practice. Sequencing takes into consideration the family of asanas, so different poses, yoga poses, also called asanas, yoga asanas, can be grouped. So for example, standing poses is one family of asanas. Forward bending asanas, back bending asanas, restorative poses may be a family of asanas, inversions, twistings, abdominal poses, right? So there's lots of different families of asanas, and sequencing takes this into account. Okay, you could use a family of poses as your inspiration for a sequence. Okay, another thing you can do with sequencing, which is often considered in Iyengar Yoga, is to look at the response of these poses, right? There are certain poses that will help facilitate a particular response. It could be anything, right? From helping to relieve back pain, or uplifting your spirits, or helping you sleep. And strategically, these poses can be grouped to help facilitate that action. And the skill, the training of certified Iyengar Yoga teachers allows them to draw on this really rich and beautiful body of knowledge that we've gained through the method in order to sequence our classes and the information that we share with our students. Okay? In addition to sequencing poses to facilitate a specific response, you can also sequence poses to highlight a particular action. Okay, so for example, a sequence might explore external rotation in the legs. And by doing that, very often the sequence of poses, the Iyengar Yoga sequence, will establish links between different poses, maybe even poses that you didn't realize were related. And so it starts to be this web of, beginner poses, intermediate poses, seated poses, standing poses, and you start to draw all these different connections because of strategic sequencing. And it's very insightful. Not only insightful, interesting, engaging, and also very insightful. Okay, now alongside sequencing is another characteristic that I find is unique to Iyengar Yoga, and that is duration, timing. And in Iyengar Yoga, there's no one exact way to do things. So we may have a dynamic practice that moves quickly from asana to asana, or we may have an Iyengar Yoga sequence that requires longer holdings and spending more time in each of the poses. And my understanding of why this is important is, it kind of comes up in a few different ways, but there is this idea that there's sort of a gestation period for each asana. And so as you evolve as a practitioner, there is you are encouraged to spend more time in an asana. Okay, we talk about sometimes touch and go in the asanas. Take the shape, come out, go to the next pose. And this is super effective and can be very fun. Um, it's one approach, okay? And especially when you're starting out as beginners, this is often enough. But where I think it becomes unique to Iyengar Yoga is when you do allow yourself to start to explore, like what happens after you get into the pose. Okay, I always think of Prashant Iyengar when I'm thinking about these issues, because he has, I remember being in classes with him a few times where he's said something similar, but basically he says that we get into the pose, he'd be teaching, we get us into the pose, and then before he could even instruct us, we're already out of the pose. And so he makes this distinction between doing the pose and then being in the pose, right? So you have to do the pose, and this goes back to precise instruction and figuring out sort of the outer frame. But then why are you doing the pose? Like once the pose is done, then what? Does that just mean like it's time to come out? Or is there fruit? Is there something to be gained by actually being in the pose? And Iyengar Yoga is unique in that it explores that aspect. Okay? But again, I do want to emphasize that this is never one size fits all, and it's never the same. So sometimes it's appropriate to move faster, and maybe certain asanas lend themselves to that type of work, that type of approach. Whereas other asanas, you can get more benefit if you can explore these longer holdings. So needless to say, timing duration is a characteristic that is very much inherent to Iyengar Yoga. Okay, and now last but certainly not least, the next characteristic that I want to discuss about Iyengar Yoga, probably my favorite, is creativity. Iyengar Yoga is so creative, okay? There is this sense of, there's a sense of rigidity because you have this precise instruction, but it is so beautifully offset by immense creativity. So if you take a pose like Utthita Trikonasana, in Iyengar Yoga, we can do Utthita Trikonasana probably 25 different ways. Okay? You can do it with your front leg up the wall on a brick. You can do it inside a trestle. You can do it with a crossover stance. You can do it with a chair. You can do it with one hand going up the wall. You can do it with one hand reaching far across the room. I mean, there are truly, truly so many different ways that each pose can be done. And this principle of creativity is ultimately what led BKS Iyengar to develop and incorporate the use of props in his practice and in his teachings. And as a community, we are known for utilizing props. And it's a beautiful thing because these props that were developed by BKS Iyengar have essentially made this practice accessible to a much broader range of the population. I mean, all body shapes, different sizes, genders, different levels, abilities, levels of health and fitness can now do Iyengar Yoga because of access to props. So what the props do, and it's just genius, the level of creativity to start using props in this way, I get very excited by it because it's really quite remarkable. But what the props do is they don't necessarily make the poses easier. It doesn't quite capture the intention behind the props. The props make the poses, can make the poses appropriate for the body that's using them, for the person, for the individual. Okay, so a person who has long legs and a short torso, relatively speaking, may approach a pose in one way, and somebody with shorter legs and a longer torso may have to adjust the setup in another way. And the props allow us to accommodate for those ranges, those differences, which is amazing. Really, it makes the practice responsive. And that's why yoga really is, Iyengar Yoga specifically, is not a one-size-fits-all type of practice. Creativity in Iyengar Yoga shows up in these two ways a lot. Okay, the one way is the use of props, and knowing, as teachers, knowing how to teach students how to modify their poses. Okay, you can use existing props like blocks, straps, chairs, but sometimes you just have to use what's available, and really has been the inspiration for these props. Kitchen counters come in handy, a stack of books, a random piece of furniture, all of that can be utilized, and there's a lot of creativity that goes into figuring out what's needed for you in the pose and finding the right prop. Okay, the second way that creativity is just constantly infused into the Iyengar Yoga practice is with these different innovative ways of modifying the poses. And sometimes this incorporates props, but sometimes it's just these other ways of doing the poses. And that translates as well into really creative sequencing. So I already talked a little bit about sequencing, but creativity plays a huge role in what I think most experienced Iyengar Yoga students, practitioners would say is really a hallmark of the method. I mean, coming out of a guided practice, a class with a teacher, you feel like you've been taken from point A to point B. Like there's a storyline in the class, and I find this tremendously engaging, exciting, both as practitioner and definitely, absolutely as a teacher as well. I would have to say that my biggest surprise as an Iyengar Yoga teacher, as an Iyengar Yoga student, practitioner, is how much this practice satisfies me creatively. Okay, I came to the practice because I wanted to help my back, right? It was completely physical reasons, wanted to get out of pain. Very quickly, even before my back pain started to become more manageable, I experienced some of the mental benefits of Iyengar Yoga. It very quickly helped to stabilize my emotions, uplift my spirits, and so that was cool. That was really cool, and it helped me stay motivated and dedicated to the practice because ultimately I still wanted to get out of pain. Over time, I was able to do that, and with the help of my teachers, I really felt empowered by the practice. And then to see those results and be able to get on with my life and live a normal life and feel good was really a huge, huge thing. But along the way, I realized that this practice was filling me up like so much beyond just, okay, I physically feel good, even I mentally feel good. As I went deeper into my practice, and certainly the teaching side of things as well, has allowed me to see shapes, to experience my own body, and think about the principles of yoga in a very, I wish I had even better words for this, but I feel like it helps me express my creativity. Like it uses the same muscles that when I do an art project, I get stimulated in the same way, if that makes sense. Anyway, okay, so just to recap here, the 4 characteristics that I find define Iyengar Yoga are precision, okay? And incorporated into precision is this idea of alignment. But as mentioned previously, alignment is much more than do the pose right. Okay, we're looking for alignment of mind and body, and we're using these precise instructions as a gateway to get there, gateway inward, and propel you forward. Okay, second characteristic is sequencing. Third characteristic is duration, timing. And then the 4th characteristic is creativity. Okay, so I hope that this video gives you a sense, an appreciation for what you can expect when you go to an Iyengar Yoga class. Okay, if you're already enjoying Iyengar Yoga classes, whether they're online or at a studio, I also hope that this video gives you maybe a broader appreciation for everything that goes into the experience of Iyengar Yoga. Okay? It's so special. It's so special. And the relationship, the personal relationship that each one of us has with our practice cannot be replicated. Okay, it can't be shared. It's my experience is my experience with my practice. Your experience is yours with your practice. And that alone, the fact that it's so uniquely yours, is a gift that Iyengar Yoga gives us. It's truly a tool for self-study, an opportunity for self-inquiry, and to experience just the beauty, the joy, the creativity of a fully embodied life, right? A fully embodied experience for the time that we spend here on this planet. All right, I am going to leave it there, but thank you so much for joining me for this chat, and I'll see you next time.